Welcome to episode 447 of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, here messing with my screen, so it's probably going to affect the video. Before I introduce my guest today, I'm going to tell you a couple things that people have said about him to set the tone. This should be fun. The first one is, I invite this young man. I wish I could do it in his voice because I think he's got a fantastic voice, even though it's kind of a dickish thing to say. I invite this young man to fry in hell, but that's probably a done deal already. And that was Kelsey Grammer. That's a tough thing to say about somebody, but I do love Kelsey Grammer's voice. How about this one? Will Keck loves Hollywood, knows Hollywood, and writes about his idiosyncratic journey through the dark and light of Hollywood. It's a lot of the word Hollywood in one sentence, but that was Henry Winkler. And then we get this sweet one. And I've had a couple of her alumni on the show. Melissa Gilbert said, here's the thing, Will owns it. He owns it all. Enjoys the tales from the great adventure that is the life of my friend Will Keck. I think I said that wrong. But finally, we get to this one. And I have to know about this one. I'll find out where you live, Keck, and I'll come to your home, burn your house down, and you'll have no place to live because there are no other options. When your home is burned down, there's literally nowhere else to go. There's no motels or anything. Let's welcome this interesting man to the show, Will Keck. Will, how are you?
Oh my God, Scott, thank you. And thank you for giving a variety of quotes there. I've interviewed with some folks and all they read is the threats against me from not only Kelsey Grammer and Bruce Willis, but Leonard Nimoy threatened me. Even Dick Van Dyke came after me. So yeah, there's plenty more quotes of support in the book, like from Henry Winkler and Lindsay Wagner and Melissa Gilbert and Donna Mills and all those folks. So I thank you for making me not a total scumball.
Well, the thing is I think people have a love-hate relationship with anybody that's in any kind of journalism related to their favorite celebrities, the people who make and break their day or night. It's got to be a really weird position for you to have been in. And this would have been when you were writing for, was it The Inquirer?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that I was a little concerned about that because even though the book is about, I was a bad boy back in the day and I worked hard to turn things around and even befriend the stars that I once went after. Even now, people will read the stories I did 30 years ago, and if it's against one of their favorite celebrities, I'm a villain. And they'll kind of discount what happened afterwards and just say, I can't believe you did that to Florence Henderson back in the day, and I adored her. And I'm like, well, you know what? She forgave me, so why can't you?
Right. Yeah. People are very possessive. I learned that on my other podcast, Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast, which was all about the band Uriah Heep. And I really learned how possessive people get about their bands, about their celebrities, about, whoever it is that makes their day and night. I do want to say the book is called When You Step Upon a Star, which is a brilliant title. By the way, I absolutely love that. Cringeworthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy. And I've just spent a few minutes with you, and you're just like the nicest guy. I love that you're not some guy that's just like, I feel like you're waiting in the bushes to find the quote to put in your next book. You're very pleasant.
Well, you were very sweet. And yeah, I mean, literally, I just got back from New York yesterday. So I had to do a quick setup so you couldn't see my laundry. And I literally was running around in my underpants. So I had to pull on some shorts so that I could move things around. So I thank you for being so gracious and allowing me to pull my shit together.
Oh, not a problem.
I'd be ready
Yeah.
to talk to you. So yeah, no, I think I'm a pretty nice guy. Not everybody like Bruce Willis would probably tell you that. But, sadly, I will say this too, that I did reach out to the celebrities in the book and I gave them a chance to read their chapters. I mean, Kelsey, I was told, read his chapter, declined to comment. But his former fiance, who I write about a lot in the book, she did contribute a lovely page. Bruce Willis, I sent his folks the chapter on him. He's not in a place to comment. Very sadly, he's lost his ability to speak. But Sybil Shepherd spoke on his behalf for my book, his moonlighting co-star. So I did give the other side a chance to explain what it was like from their perspective being hunted by a former National Enquirer reporter.
And it's nice to see Sybil sticking up for Bruce, considering the turmoil that they experienced on Moonlighting.
God.
I mean, the beauty of the show is that you never knew. And unless you read a tabloid or some kind of interview with them, you would have never known how they felt about each other because it didn't show up in the medium. But Man, that was turmoil for those two.
I don't know. As I recall, you're a bit younger than me, Scott, but as I recall, it was pretty well documented that they were really combative, and it was very hard to hide it because unlike any other TV show I've ever heard, they would be making the shows up until the very last minute before air, and
Mhm.
sometimes the show wouldn't be ready. And you would be reading the description TV guide of the new episode, and for some reason it wouldn't air, and they would put on a repeat. It was
Mhm.
because there was so much turmoil behind the scenes that they couldn't get these shows out in time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was nasty. I think in her mind, though, I mean, she just saw everything as just kind of playful antics, whereas I think he maybe holds more of a grudge and has an opinion of Sybil being sort of a whack job. But she's lovely, and I was so appreciative that she took the time to contribute her words to the book.
Not too long before he really started to suffer with his voice, they had done a little bit of a reunion. They were interviewed together, and they actually got along very well. It was really nice to see. And sometimes it just takes being away from something for long enough. And I'm wondering, do you think that was the case with you, perhaps, that just kind of being maybe them being away from the incidents that they've had with you? It's been so many years now that they're like, it was a long time ago. Let's let bygones be bygones.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, in some cases, I stalk them in person. Like I
Mhm.
showed up to Melissa Gilbert's home to find out about her wedding, but she didn't know that I was actually at her wedding.
Oh.
So a lot of times they didn't even see my face. They knew the name William Keck, the byline with the article. But when they did get to know my face, it was when I was with writing for People magazine or USA Today, and it was a very nice setup, formal interview at their home. So
Mhm.
I became this guy they knew as the good guy who protected them. Only later did they find out, or I told them what I had done back in the day. Hey, by the way, Candace Cameron, I know you've enjoyed the 20 segments I've produced for you on Home and Family talking about your Christmas movies, but I was at your wedding. I mean, so I wouldn't always tell them that. We talked about Kelsey Grammer, who was in the book quite a bit,
Mhm.
and there was one point after all these problems we'd had with each other where he was coming to me on the Emmys red carpet, and I think I was working for USA Today at the time, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll just tell him, or maybe he'll just recognize my name. And my name, as you can see in the background, is William Keck, but when he came up to me and he said, "Hello, isn't it nice to see you? I'm Kelsey Grammer." I said, "Hi, I'm William Peck." And I chickened out and I changed the K to a P.
So
And
close though.
and I think, Scott, we can work on your impression of Kelsey Grammer. It's really not that hard. And you know what you can do? So the reason I wrote so much about Kelsey in my book is that he wrote about me by name in his book, in his
Oh.
memoir. He wrote a book, So Far, and he devoted 2 pages to me, and yes, and it's available on audiobook. So if you really want to master getting his diction, buy the book on audiobook, and you can hear him say, "William Keck, a despicable piece of fleshliness, and why I invite you to burn in hell. Your mother must be very, very proud of you." And so I actually had that on my outgoing message of my answering machine when that first came out. So
Oh, that's
and by the
brilliant.
way, my mother was very proud of me, and she loved that Kelsey Grammer even was aware of who her son was. So all
Yeah.
good.
I just got mentioned by Martha Quinn on Facebook from MTV, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool.
Oh my God,
You know,
yeah, Martha
she doesn't
Quinn.
know who I am, but she mentioned me in a post, and I thought that's pretty nice. It is kind of an honor when you have somebody that you're very familiar with who definitely does not have any kind of relationship with you to, for some reason, be inspired by something you said or something you did, and whether it's to the good or the bad, you've been noticed. You've
Oh my
something you've done
gosh.
has affected someone.
For
Um,
sure. Well, I have to ask you, what did Martha Quinn write about you, or
Oh,
what did she
she
acknowledge you
had
for?
the iHeartRadio festival was coming to Vegas, and she had posted about going to concerts and whether people used any kind of ear protection or not. And being a musician and an audio engineer, of course, I'm very protective of my ears, and I just had posted that I use eargasm earplugs because they're the
Yeah.
only ones that allow me to have a conversation with somebody and be able to hear what they're saying, as well as block out a lot of extraneous frequencies. They're the only ones that have ever done that. So I had responded to her, and then when she had reposted, she goes, Scott Haskin had mentioned eargasm, and she mentioned along with another person who I was actually on a podcast with about a year ago. So it's just funny the two people that recommended that she mentioned actually knew each other. But yeah, it was just nice to see that I had said something that she took as a positive thing that she wanted to share with people, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool.
Fabulous. So let me ask now, is this going to be video? Can people see us, or is it
Oh
just
yeah.
audio?
Well, okay, let me say this. I hope it will be video. I had a little problem with my podcast from a week ago where Zoom had changed their settings and they don't store it locally anymore. Or they don't store it on their site. They only store it on your drive unless you specifically request per video that they store it in the cloud. So I tried to download the video. There was a glitch in the download and I went to re-download it from Zoom and it was gone because it never stored on Zoom. So
Oh, okay.
hopefully everything will be fine. And yes, they will
If
have
it
video.
was just audio, it's fine. I'm just going to take my pants off again.
Whatever
And
you
I
feel is
invite you to
comfortable.
do the same.
Thank you. Obviously, you've had no problem putting yourself out there in the world at risk, so I'm pretty sure there's no
Right.
line at this
Yeah.
point. Well, let me ask you though, when you first started getting into this line of work, was it pretty difficult to like the first couple times go into someone's
Yeah.
life like that? I mean,
Oh my
I
God.
think I would be terrified. I'm afraid to go into places where they invite me.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. In the book, I write about how I grew up as a child of television. I was an only child. My father died when I was a kid, and so I spent a lot of time watching classic TV.
Mhm.
And I sort of adopted these TV families as my own families. So the Bradys were like my surrogate family, and the Ewings of Dallas, and the Carringtons, and the Cartwrights of Bonanza, and the Star Trek gang. I mean, they all were my surrogate families. And so when I came out to California, I wanted to meet them. And the Inquirer ended up being my portal to meet them, but in the most horrible way. So all of a sudden, I'm crashing their weddings, crashing their funerals, sneaking into their hospital rooms, royally pissing them off. So the Bradys ended up knowing me, but as somebody to fear, not as someone to embrace
Mhm.
as cousin Oliver or something like that. I was persona non grata.
Right.
So yeah, it was very difficult going to people's doors and knocking and asking them about very uncomfortable things. I was beaten up by one 90s sitcom star on his
Wow.
front lawn. Just left there as his neighbors came out and watched and just saw him dragging me. And yeah, it was not what I expected, but it was also really fun. It was really an adventure because I wouldn't say I was a shy kid, but I wasn't certainly a big athlete. And I really had to, grow a pair to do the things that I was being asked to do.
Sure.
Walking into people's homes to ask them very personal things and finding ways into people's gated communities or into studios, sound stages to get stories. I was very innovative. So it was part reporter, part spy, part actor, and it was sort of it was like working for the mafia.
Mhm.
I'll say that.
Well,
Horrifying, but also incredibly exciting.
I would think so. Now, if you can't answer this, that's fine. But I'm curious now that you're saying this, was there any kind of protection from your employer, say the Inquirer, to if you got arrested and went to jail for trespassing, would they bail you out? Did you have any kind of protection at all from them?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that they would do that. I was never arrested or caught. I mean, but for instance, in the celebrity who beat me up, the Inquirer had as you would imagine, a really strong legal team that represented them. They at the time had the same legal team as Bill Clinton. And I mean,
Wow.
with all of his situations, I think the Inquirer and Bill Clinton probably took up all their time. But yeah, no, they introduced me to the legal team and they helped me with that situation. There was a very small settlement, and that's why this particular celebrity is the only celebrity in the book whose name I can't mention. I name every other celebrity, but I drop a few clues with this guy,
Mhm.
but I'm not actually allowed to name him.
That's understandable. I mean,
Yeah.
that takes it to a different level, I suppose. I think too, the impression that people have of people that do what you do, they see videos, especially on, TikTok, YouTube, of people where they go to them, but they're just in their face. They won't let them breathe. They
Oh
tell them
God,
go away. And is it
horrible.
is it more intense now than it was then the way they interact?
Oh my God. I mean, absolutely. I feel from my experience, the paparazzi were were like that. I mean, maybe not as aggressive as we see they are now with trying to taunt them. by
Hmm.
streaming obscene things to them about them or their spouses or their children, to get that shot they want of them being punched or setting them up even for a lawsuit. You broke my camera, you broke my nose. But the reporters I always felt were definitely more gracious. I think that was my reason for my success. I was in my early 20s, and when they opened the door and they didn't see the typical stereotypical tabloid reporter, who could maybe be this unclean man from England, who just kind of was very confrontational. And I was this kind of like Opie Cunningham, Opie Taylor, Richard Cunningham guy, Ron Howard, with a smile. And I'm so sorry to disturb you. I hate to do this, but I'm working for the Inquirer and they want to know. And a lot of times they took a chance on me and they invited me in and gave me the story.
Okay, I can see that though, because you do have a certain charm to you, and I think that would get you into a lot of places that people in general might not get access to. I mean, if you treat people well, it's amazing what you can potentially gain from that, as opposed to being pushy and the way a lot of people do it now. I mean, they'll just stalk them all the way down the street to Starbucks or on their morning jog. And it's really, it gives people that are just trying to get a story or something a bad name, because that's not what they're doing.
Well, I mean, and I did that too, though. To be fair, I have a chapter in my book about a high-speed chase I had it with Elizabeth Taylor. There's another chapter about my high-speed chase with Britney Spears. So I did those things as well to get the story. I snuck into people's hospital rooms pretending I was people that I wasn't. I had to call one sitcom actor and tell him that his son had just overdosed and died. So
Wow.
I did some really despicable things. I was sent to Northern California to find the family of the man who had just died, and his liver had been donated to Larry Hagman from Dallas. I had to
Wow.
tell them that their dead Bill, that his liver was now in the body of a star from Dallas. And I mean, it was sort of remarkable the situations I was put in, and and sometimes I got caught. I remember I got into a hospital where a big celebrity from the A Team had just died, George Papard,
Mhm.
and I pretended to be somebody I wasn't, and I got the whole story of how he died, and I had given my name and number to the nurse in case she had any more information she wanted to share. And when the article came out, she wrote me and she said, "Yeah, I hope you're very, very proud of yourself. You fooled us, but I guarantee that where Mr. Papard is a place that you'll never be." And
Wow.
I understood these things. I mean, I did some sleazy things, and they gave me a proper dressing down.
And did she end up marrying Kelsey Grammer?
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand to a certain extent, but people also have to understand how Hollywood works. Funerals are not just funerals and sad events, they're networking events also. I mean, there isn't anything where business is not done or connections are not made in a place like Hollywood. I spent enough time there to at least see that side of things, at least in the environments I was in. But I'm curious, because you said you grew up with like the Brady Bunch, for example,
Oh
and so
yeah.
did I, and Family Ties and Facts of Life and all those shows.
Yeah. Yeah,
Did
all by the way, all those shows are in the book. I mean, I have
Oh,
a
cool.
story on Kim Fields, some horrible encounters I had with Kim Fields from Facts of Life, Family Ties. I crashed Meredith Baxter Burney's wedding. And I
Wow.
write about how I got into that wedding, which is if you really want to crash a wedding, there's takeaway tips in there how you can do it. Get some free food and cake.
Well,
Very easy.
like these people, they become kind of our families, right? I mean, we watch them every week, we
Sure.
follow their lives, we identify with them. They almost become like a real part of our life. And I get why people get protective of those people. But as you started having these experiences with them, like the Brady's, for example, did it kind of ruin that for you, that connection with them as a child watching the show?
Yes, I guess I will say that. I remember I was the only reporter invited behind the scenes for I think it was their 35th anniversary special, and they were all there. Robert Reed had died, but all the six kids and Florence Henderson and even Amby Davis were there. And this was for USA Today. And my experience was that they were really a very unhappy bunch, that they didn't get along with each other that well. They had been resentful about salaries that others had received that they didn't receive. I mean, there have been for years, it was reported that that Susan Olsen didn't do a very Brady Christmas because she was on her honeymoon.
Mhm.
Well, I find out there from Chris Knight from Peter Brady, who also wrote a nice 2-page essay in my book.
Mm.
He told me that the real reason was that they had given so much money to Maureen McCormick, that there was not enough money left to give Susan Olsen what she was owed. So instead,
Wow.
they let her go and recast the role with a newcomer.
Hmm.
So these things build up resentment.
Yeah.
I flew to New Jersey to moderate a 45th anniversary panel with these Brady's. And I learned from the organizer what a nightmare it had been organizing this, that they all had these demands. And Maureen McCormick would go, but for some astronomical amount of money that this woman could never afford. And she wouldn't be in a room with any of the other Brady's. She wouldn't take photos with any of the other Brady's. So all these restrictions. Eve Plum, I think she asked for even more money and would only be there for a very limited time. So yeah, it does sort of burst the bubble to
Yeah.
look behind the curtain and see that these people are real people, co-workers. And I will say though that the Brady's, I think that they have become much closer after Florence passed, and
Mhm.
that project that HGTV did, um, the Brady House renovation show, which I
Mhm.
thought was really well done. They did a really smart thing. They were all paid the exact amount of money. They said, "This is what we'll give you all. If you want it, we'll do the show. If any of you don't want it, we're not going to do the show." And that favored nation salary they received, I think, really helped unify them and heal old wounds.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I try and think about things from their side and the pressure that those people were under at all times. I mean, when they weren't filming the show, they've got to be in the studio recording songs, and then they've got to do all these television specials and all the guest appearances. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like, and that was pretty unprecedented at the
Oh
time.
my God. I mean, the Brady's, they went to weekend rodeos, and they went to the Hollywood Bowl to sing, even though some of them hated singing. They
Mhm.
were really worked to the bone.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that while the Brady legacy has continued, their salaries, they haven't continued to make money off of it because they just missed residuals.
Hmm.
So they were paid a certain amount of money at the time, and so here they are being asked to appear to talk about the Brady Bunch, and they're getting nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and that will never happen with the cast of Friends,
Oh,
or,
yeah.
or ER or The Sopranos, because they made so much money and will continue to for the
Mhm.
rest of their lives, that they can say no to whatever they want to say no to.
Yeah, it's weird. I think about shows like Gilligan's Island and that their like reruns didn't exist, so they were never in the contract. And, of course, the network's never going to go back and go, here's what we're going to do for you guys, because why would they? But you think about people getting into a situation now, and if that show takes off and they have to do extra things like Comic-Con or, whatever the appearances are going to be, it's exciting and you kind of know what you're going into. You hope for that. But the
Oh,
Brady's
for
didn't have
sure.
that because it didn't exist before them.
No, I mean, you asked me before we started what interviews I've done recently, and
Mhm.
I just interviewed somebody I'd always wanted to interview, and she does almost no interviews, and that's Tina Louise, who played
Oh
Ginger on
yeah.
Gilligan's
Hmm.
Island. She's the last surviving member of that cast, and she turns down interviews because she doesn't want to be asked about a show that she did 3 years ago that is so popular still, but that she doesn't receive any compensation for.
Right.
I mean, stars move on from a movie and they're not asked to continually talk about that movie forever.
Hmm.
There's a PR window, and then they move on to talk about their next project.
Right.
So I get it. I mean, they're still selling Gilligan's Island lunchboxes, but Tina isn't making any money from that. So, there are
Mhm.
some people who just are good sports and they don't have a lot of things to do. And I mean, you take Dawn Wells, who played Mary Ann. She embraced it, and she always
Yeah.
continued to do interviews and pop up on talk shows. But there's certainly no obligation to. And I think I was always kind of resentful toward people like Tina Louise and Eve Plum for saying no to things. But I tell you, I mean, when I was a TV guide and USA Today, I was often asked to donate time to do this appearance and that appearance, and I said yes to some. But
Mhm.
I started to get like, why am I promoting your DVD of a new TV show that you're going to make bazillions from that I'm part of. I appeared in a Q&A. Why am I going to continue to promote that when you're not going to pay me a cent?
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes I did through relationships, but I felt fine saying no.
And that's an important thing. I think that people, and we talked about this a little bit too, I think people are afraid to say no because they're afraid that that will be the one no that will kill their career. Everybody's so on edge now because there's so many people. You can be replaced by 100 people within an hour easily, whatever your job is, wherever you are. And I think everybody's so afraid to do anything that jeopardizes their position, which is understandable, but it's still just a job. You still have a right to have a life outside of it and
Sure.
choose to do things that benefit you and not to do things that don't.
Sure. Especially if you didn't enjoy the project you did. If you
Yeah.
didn't have a pleasant experience, didn't like your co-stars or hated your role and you were glad when the show was canceled, then why would you want to continue talking about something that was so unpleasant for you?
Yes, exactly. Now, with this book, and I've got the Amazon link in the show notes. I've got the links to the websites in the show notes for you guys too.
Thank
You can just
you.
click on it and go right there. I imagine though, I didn't double check the Amazon site, but I imagine this was not something that you could do as an audiobook.
Oh, well, it certainly is, and I haven't, but I definitely plan to.
Oh, okay.
I did. There's a delay because I was looking into the possibility of using some of the interviews, like sound clips from those that I interviewed, and legally, I think that's a problem. Maybe with some of the celebrities who have died,
Mhm.
I can run audio clips, but no, I plan on doing it. People
Oh,
want to hear
good.
my voice reading these stories. I don't have as wonderful a voice as Kelsey Grammer, but it ain't bad. I think I can project pretty well.
Well, there's something about a few people. Bill Daniels is one of them. Kelsey Grammer is
Oh,
another that they just sound like they've had a very high level education in
oh
their
yeah.
voice, their dialect. There's something about the way they speak that they almost sound British, but they're not. Uh,
That's so
but
true.
you have a great voice. I'm sure you'll do a fine job with the audiobook. I was thinking
Why,
just in
thank you
terms
very
of
much, Scott. I really appreciate it.
I was thinking in terms of just, you're reading people's letters, you're telling stories, but you've got, probably some statistical stuff that might be a little bit difficult audio wise, but
No, it would be
like,
quite easy. I mean,
okay,
you can't
good.
get the full appreciation with an audiobook because there are over 200 photos in the book
Hmm.
of never seen photos, my personal photos that I took with these people. I later in my career I produced many reunions of these TV casts, so there are photos that haven't been seen of the last time all of them were together, or
Hmm.
some of them started passing away. I
Yeah.
mean, photos with the casts of Designing Women and WKRP and either Gilligan's Island cast. I think some of the last photos that were taken, before they never saw each other again.
Oh, WKRP, one of my all-time favorite shows. There's a great rewatch podcast on WKRP where they went into great detail. I mean, down to every poster that appeared on the wall. Very,
Wow.
very well done.
Wow.
Uh, I was just going to say something. I hate when I do. It's so rare now. I've gotten so comfortable doing interviews. Thoughts usually don't leave my head. But no, that's really cool. And I think that those reunions are important. I mean, these people, whether they enjoyed the process or not, were in each other's lives in very intense situations. They're the only ones that are going to understand what it was like to have gone through those. And I think to be able to look back on it years later after maybe the emotions have died down and the intensity of it has been away from their body long enough that they could just look back on it as kind of outside of it almost. I think those are
Yeah,
really important.
I'm going to be taking the book to the South Fork Ranch the last weekend of October. I think it's October 27th through 29th.
Mhm.
I'm going to be moderating a lot of panels with the Dallas cast members, and also I'll have a booth there selling the book. But the typical people are going to be there that always show up for the Dallas reunions. No, Larry's passed, but
Right.
everyone else. I mean, Linda Gray and Patrick Duffy and Charlene Tilton, Steve Canale, and somebody who always declines is Victoria Principal.
Mhm.
And I don't really know why. I mean, I she left the show and just really didn't want to look back. I have a chapter in my book about Victoria Principal. I was friendly with her, and then I wasn't, and I understand why we're not friendly. I was completely obsessed with her, and even before I worked for the Inquirer, when I first came out to LA, I was so really desperate to meet her that I booked an appointment with her plastic surgeon husband, Dr. Harry Glassman, to get a nose job. And not only did I have that appointment, I actually underwent the nose job. And through that, I met Victoria, and she complimented me on my new nose that her husband had given me.
Okay, if anything else hadn't earned you the title of bad boy, that's like the highest, like you're willing to have reconstructive surgery.
Yes.
That's intense.
Just like the characters on Dallas did. I mean, I think Pam actually underwent reconstructive surgery. Victoria read my chapter. She asked for a couple changes because she has, what I didn't know is she has an incredible memory. She remembered what meal I ordered at a lunch that we had 20 years ago, and she was right.
Wow.
She was absolutely right. She declined to write one of the essays that the other celebrities do, but she did call me. We had a lovely off the record, I won't talk about it, hour conversation, and we wished each other well and caught each other up on our lives. I apologize for some of the things I did. And so this book really has been healing for me and for them as well. The first celebrity who offered to write one of these commentaries was Marcia Cross. There's a lot of stories in my book about desperate housewives. I had run-ins with Terry Hatcher and Nicolette Sheridan. And Marcia, I was in her home. I was with USA Today, and I was doing an on-the-record interview where I was going to meet her two new twins, and we were going to do a photo shoot. And I ruined the whole day by asking about these nude photos that had just leaked of her that morning. And I was sort of wrestling. Do I bring this up? It's not going to go over well. But that's this tabloid bad boy in me that sort of just stuck around. I think he's gone, but it took a long time to really get him, this demon, out of my body. And yeah, I asked about it. She wasn't happy about it. I left the house, ruined a whole beautiful day. But when I reached out to her, she read the chapter and she said, "Will, give yourself a break." We went on to have a lot of great interviews after that. I don't think about this. I think about the lovely time we had that day before it went south. And she wrote a lovely,
But see, and that's
commentary in the book.
It's all the attitude of the person and how they choose to handle. I would say that
That's
I don't
exactly
think
right.
being in the entertainment industry should warrant being hounded. I think, it's a job. Like when I worked in mortgage, I went to my job. No one came like looking in the window asking what I was, what kind of insurance policy my borrower had. But my job wasn't fascinating. I mean, these people are in a position where, like I said, people get connected with them because they become their family. But it's such a weird, bizarre, and unique type thing. And there is a market for that kind of work that you were doing because people want to know. But at the same time, they don't want to know because they don't want that image that they have of that person shattered.
Yeah.
You see Meredith Baxter Burney playing the mom on Family Ties. You don't want to know that, on Friday night, she's doing whatever she's doing in her real life. She may be that person in real life. She may be completely different. It's called acting. And people don't seem to separate the actor from the acting. Do you find that to be the case?
Oh, I mean, for sure, and I think with Meredith, I mean, there's a lot of conservative viewers out there who have a problem with the fact that Meredith Baxter Burney is now very happily married to a woman after 3 marriages to men, and that sort of just taints their image of her in the show. And I don't understand that. I do know I one of the subplots of my book is my own journey. I started out as a closeted gay guy who was very hypocritical because here I was exposing celebrities' secrets about their private lives and completely lying about my own private life. So I think a lot of people have enjoyed my honesty and talking about how I was able to come to a place where I was honest with my career and also with my personal life. They went hand in hand. The first person I came out to was, speaking of TV moms, the mother from Who's the Boss, Judith Light.
Oh, yeah.
Was the first person that I came out to. We were in a seminar together. But some of the people who've looked at my book, I've gotten a tremendous amount of positive reviews and positive reactions, but there are some people who I think just still did not want to read a book that was written by somebody who's gay. And that sort of really just saddens me that we're still at that place. But I mean, you look at the news and you realize that some people have just not evolved to a place where their heart is open to love people who are different from them.
And I think that as time goes on, I think that's starting to change a little bit more. But when you're talking about the older generations of people that never really learned how to deal with their feelings, especially men, you're told this is how you be a man, and that's it. You don't cry, you don't do this, you don't do that. This is what you're supposed to do in your family. And it's hard to break that thing that you've been taught since you were very little and what your impression was to be able to open up to things like exploring your feelings or being honest or letting things go because you just were never programmed to do it.
Well, I mean, I wish that I agreed that things were changing, but I remember having that same conversation in the 80s. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, once this older generation is gone, these racist views will go away and their kids and grandkids. But like you just said, people are raised in a certain way to hate or love.
Mhm.
And that seems to continue generation after generation. So I don't know. I hope
It is
I hope
shocking.
things change.
I'm hoping that as we go on and evolve, and especially with things like the New Age movement that's been happening over the last 20 years or so, since maybe like since The Secret came out and some people started looking at life a little bit differently. I'm hoping that it will start to eat away at that old programming. That we have a lot of men are talking about being in therapy now, which 20 years ago wouldn't have even thought about
Oh
going,
yeah,
let alone admitting it. So I'm
that's
hoping
right.
that we're starting to at least evolve a little bit in the right direction. I mean, it's going to take generations, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but we have to start somewhere. And I think we've done that.
Well, it's all about, representation, what people in their mind think about a concept. I mean, when gay people were first presented on TV, they were all dressing up as women. So people thought, oh, that's what gay people are, and that's a very small percentage.
Yeah,
That's a whole different category. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
I dressed up as a woman once for Halloween, won a costume contest, but that's not my interest. I certainly respect and applaud people who do want to do that. What do I care? What does anybody care about what other people do in their private lives or who they marry? I don't get that. And the same thing with therapy. I mean, I remember Bob Newhart just recently passed away.
Mhm.
The Bob Newhart show was a great show. He was playing a psychiatrist, but if you think about the patients that went in to see Dr. Hartley, they were all crazy. They were all
Right.
really nutty people. So I think people thought only really crazy people go because it wouldn't have been interesting on a TV show to hear him talking to people who have anxiety or depression or trying to get
Yeah.
over the loss of a loved one or accept themselves. So I mean, you're exposed to certain things, and now we know that any old people go to therapy who just are working through a life change, something to improve their lives and make
Mhm.
themselves a better person. Just as shows like Glee and Will and Grace show that there are people who are just like everybody else who just happen to want to date somebody who's their same sex.
Right.
No
And
big
with
deal.
with the therapy thing, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of those rewatch podcasts where there are therapy, like online therapy companies that use
Yeah.
them in their advertising. The celebrities will read the copy. They'll say, "I've been with this doctor for a year. I've been, it's great. My first one didn't work out. They allowed me to switch." And they make it comfortable because now it's the celebrities that are saying it's okay. The people that for some reason we trust their advice, which
Yeah.
is another thing I really don't understand. That, well, if a
Yeah.
celebrity say they get hired to do that, so
Yes. You're
it's
right. You're
such
right
a
about that. They're
bizarre thing. I don't
a
understand it.
paid spokesperson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we know they are, but still, we're like, yeah, but Alyssa Milano said it was okay to do this, so it must be okay because she
That's
said it.
right.
I don't understand the
Yeah.
mentality of people when it comes to the way that they view celebrities. But I want to ask you before we go, and I appreciate all the extra time that you've given me. I'm glad that we were able to do this. Thank you so much. So this book is out. Like I said, the links are in the show notes, guys. Please check it out. But what kind of stuff are you doing now? Because you're in a different line of work, but still in entertainment.
Well, my passion for classic television is never going to go away. I mean, I just absolutely love that innocent time in the 70s and 80s when there was just so much programming that was just feel good and escapist. I mean, there's some incredible shows on the air. I mean, Game of Thrones and Sopranos and The Bear. But they're so violent, a lot of them, and just they can be very, very dark. Not great shows, really well written,
Mhm.
but the world is so kind of scary right now with so much violence. I want the TV to be my portal to escapism and fantasy and fun, to forget about that the horrors and the violence. So I'm going to continue to find ways to keep Gilligan's Island and Dynasty and the Brady Bunch, these kind of shows alive, and the Waltons. So my book does that. It really is a love letter to a lot of these shows, like Wonder Woman, The Bionic Woman, and $6 Million Man. But I'm going to find other ways to do it, and I've teamed with a classic TV star, and we're working on a movie project that we're getting closer to having made. I just came up with an idea for my next book, which is actually going to be fictionalized in a way, but still dealing with these classic, wonderful celebrities. So I'm going to keep on playing in that playground and doing interviews. Really excited about, like I said, going to South Fork with the book. I mean, that's sort of a dream, to be at my fantasy home with my
Right.
fantasy TV family with my book about them.
Mhm.
And Linda Gray is one of the people who wrote a lovely essay in my book, and Cherie Wilson, who played April, she also contributed a chapter, an essay. So just continuing to play in this playground and find new exciting ways to tell my story and express my enthusiasm for things that I don't want to go away.
Good. And I've never met Patrick Duffy, but I have heard nothing but absolutely wonderful
Oh yeah,
things about what just a kind and generous and thoughtful
total
person he
sweetheart.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, total sweetheart who embraces his fans, embraces that character, has gone on to do other things, but will always be happy to talk about stepping out of the shower after the dream season. I mean, he'll
Right.
tell that story. He's probably told that story 3,000 times, and will be happy to tell it 3,000 more times as long as people care and ask him about it. And I think that's a great way to live.
It's a weird position to be in, knowing that you've touched so many lives without meeting the lives and the people that you've touched. And celebrities do that all the time. They don't know I'm sitting there watching them on television week after week, or that, there's something, maybe the way that they delivered a line or a speech or just something about them I heard in an interview really just struck me and impressed me, or didn't impress me, whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
yeah, that's so true, Scott. I mean, I've been lucky to get a lot of feedback from my friends who've read the book and enjoyed it. But when I get an email or someone reaches out to me on social media to tell me, someone I've never met, to tell me they read my book and really got a kick out of it and enjoyed it or cried or whatever, that is extra special. And that's why, I mean, I set up many ways to meet me. I have my website, which is whenyoustepUponAstar.com,
Mhm.
and there's a contact me link in there where you can send me a direct message. And of course, Instagram, When You Step Upon a Star on Instagram, and Facebook, When You Step Upon a Star. So I love hearing from people who've read the book, to tell me what they think. And even some of the ones who are critical, they still read my book and bought a copy, and I appreciate hearing what their reaction was as well. So yeah, if any of y'all pick up the book, and I hope you do, on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, or you can get it on Kindle or Apple Books, I'd love to hear what you think.
And eventually audiobook. And
And
guys,
eventually, yes.
take a minute and leave a review on Amazon. Even if you just give it a star rating, it really makes a
Well,
difference to
don't give it a
people.
1-star
No,
rating.
well, no, a
Yeah.
multi-star rating. Like
Please
if
give it a
if
5-star rating. Yeah, if you didn't like it,
right.
you don't have to leave a review. That's
Well,
okay.
you know what though? I learned from Gabrielle Stone. Last time I had her on the show, we were talking. I think we might have been talking about it after the show or before, but because I had somebody that had left a really bad rating on one of my books because it
Oh,
wasn't what they wanted it
it
to be.
stings. It really
It
stings.
does, but you know what? It also adds some legitimacy to the other ratings, because if you just have 5-star ratings, it looks like you had beta readers, you gave people your book in exchange for a rating. Like
Oh,
having
I
a
haven't
couple of
thought about
negative
that.
reviews, it legitimizes the reality of the reviews that you're getting. So a couple aren't bad. And in this day and age, knowing how much people are just ready to complain about every little thing that
Yes.
happens to them, it's kind of expected.
Yeah, sure. And I even know with myself, I mean, even though it's very easy to leave a review, it takes a little energy and we're all so busy. And I think most of us will review something when it upsets us or we want to complain about something, call
Yeah.
attention to something. I want to speak to your manager.
Hmm.
Usually it's not I want to speak to your manager to thank you for the incredible service. Sometimes I have done that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's much easier to slam and especially when you're anonymous,
Oh, absolutely. And that's
right?
that's what makes it so easy. Although I will say I do want, and I don't know if he's listening to this, but if you are Bruce Willis, please leave an Amazon review of this book. I would love to see that.
Well, I
I
hope
think
you
that
would
would be
get
a
a
lot
kick
of fun.
out of it. I really do. I mean, and I really don't think, like Sybil Shepherd said in the book, I don't think that he really was going to come crouch on my front lawn with a flamethrower like his diehard character and torch my casa. I
Right.
really don't. I think he was having fun with me to get a reaction out of me.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're costly. They're not easy to get.
right? Well, he probably has tons,
He might, yeah, you never know. But
or he
I
just borrow
think
some from Sylvester Stallone or
true, yeah.
Arnold.
And we
Yeah.
certainly know that they know each other very well.
Oh
Obviously, they had
yes.
the restaurants together and all
And in
that.
Hollywood. Yeah.
But no, I'm excited to read this book. I'm sure it's going to be just chock full of very interesting stories and great insight. And thank you for taking the time to write that and put those, set the record straight, and take the time to reach out to everybody. I really love that you did that and you gave them a
Thank
chance
you.
to read their chapter. You cleared the air with people. I think that was probably the best takeaway for you in this whole project.
Thank you. And besides the celebrity commentaries, and there are so many. I also one of the last things I added to the book was at the end of each chapter, I read them and I realized, I these things happen, but I learned something from these experiences and I grew. So at the end of each chapter, I have a lesson learned. A lot of them are humorous, but a lot of them have heart and really show that we go through things in our lives that are upsetting or things that we don't want to do or we regret. But as long as you learn something from them, it sort of makes it worth it. And you don't
Yeah.
have to be the person today who you were in your stupid youth. We do have a chance to change. And I do think some of these lessons learned that I include are things that people can relate to in their own lives.
Mhm.
They can sort of take these lessons to their own workplace or in their own relationship. And it's never too late to say I'm sorry. Can we start over?
Well, and I think too, it's important to realize that who people were 20 years ago is probably not who they are now, especially if you're talking, early 20s, say versus 40s or 50s. I mean, we don't know what we're doing when we're that young. A lot of people don't know what they're doing at 40 or 50, but certainly people can change. And it's important to look back and say, you know what, the guy I knew back then was this person. Who are you today?
Absolutely. I'm all about giving people second or third chances. And I
Yeah.
mean, really, and I really do pity the politicians because I can't imagine anybody going into politics now because they dig and dig and dig to things that you did in college. And I
Mhm.
can say I'm certainly not the same person that I was in college. I write in the book about a comic strip that I had in college, and it was incredibly sexist
Mhm.
and probably a couple of things were borderline racist. And I was a stupid kid.
Mhm.
And I'm not that anymore. I own up to it. I'm like, my God, what was I thinking? So I think that we really should view people as to who they are now.
Mhm.
And we don't need to expose the embarrassing things that they did before they really got to open their eyes and know the world as an adult.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes we don't know better. Sometimes we are in a place where we just don't care because something has happened and we're just in that zone where I don't care anymore. I'm going to say whatever just pops into my head. And we all go through different phases. It's the person you grow into that matters the most.
For sure, for sure. And I we talked about that all gay people don't dress up as women. Well, I actually do have a photo in the book of me in elementary school when I dressed up as Dolly Parton, and that photo in the book is alongside a photo of me with Dolly. After I showed her that photo, she actually autographed that photo of me as her, and she wrote in there to Dolly number one from Dolly number two. And
Oh,
she
wow.
told me after looking at that photo, she said, "You mean to tell me your mama didn't know you was gay?" So it's great to get to a place of confidence where and this comes with age, that you
Mm,
just really don't care anymore. I mean,
yeah.
I'm an open book, literally now an open book, and I'm
Mhm.
really happy to share my stupid foibles and the things that I learned with anybody who cares to have a look at the book. I'm very grateful to anybody who gives it a read.
That's awesome. Well, I really want to thank you for your time. I have an idea for you on how you can do those photos in the audiobook. So hang on for me for just a second,
Oh,
if you
great.
would. For you guys, like I said, as always, links are in the show notes. Go check out the book, check out the websites, and don't be scared to drop Will a line and let him know how you felt about the book, as long as
I
it's
would love
positive.
that.
Because if you're just gonna hate, why are you listening? You
Yeah.
know, I don't get that mentality. If you don't like something, that's fine. People are welcome to like or dislike whatever, however they feel about something. But, to just write in to complain about something, these are all things that happened in the past. So it's not like this is an ongoing, here's what I'm doing today kind of thing. So
Yeah.
just find
Yeah,
the enjoyment
absolutely.
in it, enjoy the stories, enjoy what you learn, and feel free to thank Will for writing the book and let him know you enjoyed his work.
I would love that. A woman who's a huge Gilligan's Island fan just reached out to me. She read the book and saw some of my Gilligan stories, and she just sent me yesterday all these photos of her home, which is a Gilligan's Island shrine. And I mean,
Wow.
I just love these. And actually, she'd asked me to be on her. It seems like a lot of us have podcasts, Scott, and
Mhm.
she has a little Gilligan's Island podcast. And I said, you know what? Sure, I'd be happy to come on and tell some of my stories about the professor and Ginger and Marianne. So it's a great way to network. I've really enjoyed meeting people who have some of the same interests as I do,
Mhm.
pop
Well, that's
culture.
amazing. That's taking it to a new level. I'll say that. Well, thank you so much, Will. When your next project comes out, come back and visit us again.
Thank you, Scott. I'd love to anytime.
You bet. And for you guys, check the links in the show notes. We will see you in another week with another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. Cheers.